Good evening, folks. Along with my co-host, Blue Tippington, and our producer, Wayne Goldberg, I'm Wink Rothstein, and we are the Pinnacle Insiders.
Pinnacle Insiders this week is brought to you by Simply Fresh Market and Chacho's Produce. They are our go-to place to get our produce in the Pinnacle League.
Finest produce around, Blue. You look very relaxed today. Sleeves are rolled up, no jacket. You're feeling no pressure. We're in the conference championship, right?
Playoff week.
This is it. This is what really separates everybody from everybody else. I don't really know what that means, but you get the point. You look very relaxed. It's conference championship week, Final Four. All these teams worked really hard to get to this point. We're going to pick winners later on in the show. We talk a little bit about the games as we always do. But first, let's talk about, are these the four teams you expected to be here at this point?
Actually, no. I thought that we would see a team like Forest or a team like Jim here at this point. Maybe on the Spielman side of it, I probably saw these two teams being here at this point, yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Tony is obviously a surprise. He was last place in this conference last year, first place this year. Dale was here last year, so we kind of expected that. And then on the Spielman side, I think Mitchell made some good moves at the trade deadline. So did Josh, to get them where they are right now. So let's talk about some games. Wayne, what's first on the docket?
The Josh Martins at Mitchell's.
That is
Very
correct.
Very good.
That is correct. So we're going to talk about the Spielman conference first. Folks, let's peel back the curtain a little bit. We're a little tired. We've been doing a lot of research all day. This is one of our most important shows, probably next to next week. So let's get down to it in the Spielman Conference. You've got two teams who, in the same division, they know each other well. Played twice before this year. Both, like I talked about before, have made moves to get to this point. Mitchell acquiring Drew Brees and Josh acquiring Roddy White at the Week 9 trade deadline. Who do you think is going to make a bigger impact? Now that we saw what Roddy White did last night with his 30 points, which trade deadline move makes a bigger impact on this game?
We saw what Roddy White already did. Drew Brees makes a big impact. But for his team, I think Josh did a better job because what he had to give up for Roddy White. He gave up players that aren't in the starting lineup. So he added to his starting lineup by taking away bench players. Mitchell had to upgrade at quarterback from Tony Romo to Drew Brees. But he traded some players that he may be starting now. So he took away in other areas. So Drew Brees may have a bigger impact on the score, but on his team, I don't think that he's going to be able to cover what he lost by trading away Romo and DeMarco Murray and Jonathan Baldwin. Well, DeMarco Murray is injured now, but he could have used them the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And, the other thing I think this game really is going to come down to, besides Drew Brees, which we'll talk about again in a minute, I think it comes down to Josh's running backs versus Mitchell's wide receivers. I think, you've got LeGarrette Blount and Michael Bush stepping up. They're not going to go off, but they're going to get anywhere from 10 to 15 points. Mitchell's wide receivers, he's got to hope that they combine. Each one gets anywhere from 7 to 15. I think that's the only way he's got a shot at winning this game.
Well, Steve Smith and Miles Austin are both top 15 wide receivers. Just because Miles Austin hasn't been here doesn't mean that he can't do it. We've already seen what's going to go to Miles Austin is going to be taken away from Dez Bryant. That's going to directly play an effect on both teams in this game. The one iffy part here is Jacoby Jones. He's going to get only a few targets, and if Jacoby Jones doesn't make the best out of those targets, then he's going to have a very low score.
Yeah, Andre Johnson officially ruled out today, so Jacoby Jones is technically their number one. We'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about Dale, but I think more than Jacoby Jones, I think Houston relies heavily on the run more than anything else. So I don't know how much he's going to put up. And then I think we would both regret it if we didn't point out you've got the number one quarterback against the number two quarterback. Two guys who are partially responsible for both of these teams being here. Talk a little bit about Rodgers versus Brees and what that can do to this game.
This is probably part of the reason why Chris made that trade. Going into this matchup, Chris is 0-4 lifetime against Josh. So I feel like he needed to make, he probably felt like he needed to make a move and pick up a quarterback. He couldn't get the best quarterback, so he went out and got the number 2 quarterback. This week, with their matchups, Breeze at Minnesota and Rodgers at Kansas City. Rodgers has been doing it every week, doesn't matter where he's going. And Breeze in a dome at Minnesota, I feel like that matchup is pretty much a push at this point.
So, so do I. I think they're both probably going to end up in the high 30s. I mean, that's what these two do. I think you run a risk a little bit with Rodgers being pulled late, maybe in the game in the fourth quarter, but last week they pulled him and he already had 21 Pinnacle points.
Well, you could see last night, Matty Ice got pulled in the third quarter, he already had 27.
Absolutely. So I think those type of guys, if they get pulled, it's because the game is lopsided. The reason it's lopsided is because they do what they do. All right, are we ready to make our first conference championship pick? Or do you want to do some over-unders first?
I've got a few over-unders for you,
Okay.
if you're ready. For Josh, we're going to go with LeGarrette Blount at Dallas. His over-under is 13.4.
I'm going to take the under. I think in order for Blunt to get 13, he's got to score a touchdown, and you can't count on that. So I'm going to take the under.
I'm going to take the over because I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to be able to pass. I think they're going to get Blount his carries, and I think 13.4 is low enough where he can break 1 or 2 runs and get that 13.4.
Fair enough. Wayne, did you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I think he's going to go over. He'll probably have like 50, 60 yards and get a scored touchdown in the fourth quarter. Garbage.
Yeah, garbage time. All right, and for Mitchell?
Miles Austin, he's back in his lineup. He's going to be at home against Tampa Bay. His over-under is 14 points.
I think here I'm going to take the over. Des Bryant's been not really getting it all together. Last week he only had 1 catch. It was for a 50-yard touchdown, but it looks like Miles Austin is coming back and getting more targets, and he's got a really good matchup against Tampa Bay. So I'll take the over.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to take the under. I think that Lauren Robinson has become more of an offense. They still have Des Bryant. They're going to throw to Felix Jones. It's going to reduce Miles Austin's targets. He's going to be close. He's going to be between 10 and 14, but I'm going to take the under.
Okay. Let's make some picks. What do you like in this one, Blue?
A lot because I knew that Josh needed a big score out of this flex. That was going to be a big point score for him. I think his wide receivers and Mitchell's running backs will offset a little bit, but having that 30 in the flex is a huge advantage. I don't think Mitchell will be able to overcome. I'm taking Josh.
Well, I think Mitchell's going to have a 30-point scorer of his own. LaShawn McCoy could get 30. You look at Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, like we said, they cancel each other out. But I think Miles Austin and Steve Smith, look for Steve Smith to maybe have a sneaky good game here. Houston's a tough matchup, but I think he gets in the end zone. Same thing with Miles Austin. So I'm going to take Mitchell. Wayne?
This is tough. I think Josh is going to pull it off, but Mitchell, he has a lot of players where they're home run hitters. I think he has potential to win. I'm rooting for Mitchell, but I think Josh takes this.
We're all rooting for Mitchell.
Everybody's rooting for Mitchell. Nobody wants a repeat champion.
Yeah, nobody wants Josh.
No, why would you want that?
Yeah.
All right, what's the next game? Let's get into it.
Next game is Tony at Dale.
Okay, so once again, you've got teams in the same division playing against each other. Played twice already this year. Very familiar with each other's teams, but also, different matchups. You've got injuries, so maybe seeing a few different things. First thing we want to talk about, because last night's game did happen, do you think Dale's going to regret starting Eli Manning instead of Matt Ryan?
No, I think what he's doing there is he's trying to go with the safer play. I think Matt Ryan has a wider range of scores. He may score a little bit lower. He's been scoring higher lately. But Eli Manning is more consistent, and I think he feels that if he can be consistent with all his positions, that he should be able to beat Tony. I think that's why he went with Eli. I don't think Eli's going to get 27, but I don't think he's going to get under 20, 22.
Okay.
So it should be a good.
And then, same thing with consistency on Tony's side. You look at Adrian Peterson, the Vikings came out today and said that he's going to have a limited role. If you were Tony, it's Adrian Peterson. So if he's active, you feel like you have to. But Tony's got some good options on his bench. If you were Tony, would you play Adrian Peterson?
If I'm Tony, I don't play Adrian Peterson or Ryan Grant. For the integrity of the show, I just want to say that first. I would play the 2 guys he has on his bench, Barber and Bush, they seem more consistent at that point. I don't know how many touches Grant's going to get. It seems like he didn't have that many touches last week. He just made 2 big runs. You can't count on 2 big runs. And Peterson, although you want to play him because you're paying him $150 a year, and you gotta get him in. He's your best player. If he's limited, Reggie Bush is going to score 15 points. So if he's not getting 15, might as well go with Bush.
Might as well go with Bush. And then a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, sort of joking manner, but also not. You look at Tony Gonzalez last night, only got 1.9 points. But when you look at the matchups individually, as we like to do, is that enough to beat Jermichael Finley with how bad he has been lately?
Well, he's up and down. Last week he had no catches with only on 1 target. The week before he had 11 targets. But one thing that we're not talking about is Jennings is out. So with him out, I think that increases Finley's targets. I think he's going to be able to easily score 2 points.
Should be able to.
Easily score.
He should cover that too.
He may have 1 catch from 14 yards.
Which would tie.
It.
Yes. All right, let's do some over-unders on this one.
Okay. Over-under for Dale, we're going to go with Deshaun Jackson back in his lineup. Maybe a questionable start against the Jets at home, 9.6.
I'm going to take the over. It looks like Vic is going to play again, possibly. If Vic plays, he targets Jackson more than Vince Young does. I know the Jets, it looks like an intimidating matchup, but Revis doesn't cover the deep threat as much as he does the possession threat. So I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to take the over also. I think that Revis will probably split time between Macklin and Jackson. And when Jackson is on Cromartie, I think they'll test the long ball. If he connects on one of those, then he'll easily be over 9.6 in this game.
Absolutely. Wang?
I think he's gonna go over. Like you guys said earlier, Vic tends to target him more, and they've had a couple games where they can work the chemistry back together now that since he's been back. So I think over.
Absolutely. Tony's side of the ball?
Darren Sproles at Minnesota, over under 17.2.
It sounds a little bit crazy, but I think I'm going to take the over. I like the matchup against Minnesota. I think that they might, we talked about this a little bit before we came on the air. They might have to leave Chris Ivory or Pierre Thomas in the game just for pass blocking. But I still think Sproles gets in there on 2nd, maybe 3rd down and does what he does, which is catch balls out of the backfield. In a PPR league, Sproles is a top 5 guy. Maybe not throughout the entire season, but in a matchup like this, he's a guy you have to play. So I take the over.
That matchup against Minnesota, I feel, is good for all the weapons on New Orleans. But I think there's too many weapons, and 17 points seems like too much for one guy in that other than Breeze, in that offense to get. Maybe Jimmy Graham. But I think he spreads it around. Sproles isn't going to run too much. He's only going to get that on receiving yards. I think he'll be close, but I'm going to take the under.
Okay. Wayne?
I think under, but he's just 1 screen pass away from breaking another one. So,
all right, let's make some picks. Wayne, who do you like in this one?
just like the other one, I would like Tony to win for the integrity of the show.
Nobody wants Dale to win.
Nobody wants Dale to win, and but I think Dale's gonna pull it off. I don't think Adrian Peterson's gonna play too much in this one. So, what do you think?
Lou?
I'm going to go with Dale also. I feel like Tony Gonzalez needed to do a little bit more for Tony last night. And I think that opposite of last week when his receivers carried him, I think the running backs will take the load this week. And I think he'll get it done between those really good matchups. Foster against Carolina, Lou at the Giants, and Wells against Cleveland.
I tend to agree. Let's sweep it up. I think I'm going to take Dale. Peterson hurts. As much as Peterson hurts Tony, I think Foster helps Dale this week. Foster's going to have a big game against Carolina, I think, somewhere in the 30s. It's hard to predict stuff like that, but I'm going to take Dale. So that wraps it up for this week for the conference championships. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. We'll see you guys for the Igloo Bowl next week. Look out for us. Live special location at the site of the Igloo Bowl. That's the DL on the PL.
See ya.